In our conversation, Tara and I had the opportunity to speak to two incredible artists, Marie Mahabal and Kaitlyn Santawana. We got to talk about what it means to be ethnically ambiguous in theater and in life. These two enlightened us about the importance of culture and representation on the stage. Their insight is sure to inspire you.
Okay, hi guys.
Hello.
So we're gonna just jump right in. So the first question I'll ask, while doing a show or walking through life, do you find many people making assumptions of your ethnicity ignorantly?
Yeah. If I start, I can say that it's almost become like a daily routine that, or just something that, I don't know why people are so curious about it, but I always get the question, oh my God, like, so what are you? And it's just, it gets kind of like, at first I was like, I like wanted to play along and be like, yeah, like I'm this and like, but now at this point in time, I'm just kind of like, why? Like, why does it matter? And every single time I'm like, oh, like I'm Filipino and my mom's half white, people will be like, oh my God, I have a Filipino friend. And it's things like that that I get.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot of mixed and biracial people experience the like, oh, really? I would have never guessed that you were that. Or I think that, oh, I would have thought that you were Latin. And sometimes it almost, the door is opened to someone expressing their projected image of what they think you are onto you. So for me, when someone asks like, you know, what's your background or where are your parents from? For me, I don't have as much of an issue with it because I am aware of the fact that I am very ambiguous looking. And I think it is a beautiful thing to connect to your heritage. And however, when it feels like you're trying to put me in a box, or then when I tell you what I am, you say, really? I would have never guessed that you were that. That's where I have a little bit of an issue with the asking someone's cultural background. And the way in which it's done and the sensitivity, I guess, to that.
It's kind of a nice way to like share your heritage as well. I get that part. I love it. I actually do like it sometimes. You can kind of tell when people are trying to, when what people are trying to get out of it. So, but if it's like a chance to talk about like your heritage or like the food you eat or like the kind of things that you celebrate, that's really cool. That's one perk of getting asked that question, is to like kind of spread awareness and like, teach people about it.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's really funny. I feel like as a Black person in Canada specifically, the question is like, so are you Jamaican or are you African? It's like either or. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. But
yeah.
And I'm just like, I mean, like, then I also feel kind of like, even though I have Jamaican in me, I'm just like, I don't want to admit now because I'm like, why would you make that assumption? Like, I'm not even speaking in patois or something. Anyways, okay. So the next thing is the three of us worked for a very well-known company that we shall keep nameless. While working, you both had similar tracks in which you played a Chinese woman, an indigenous woman, a Middle Eastern Indian woman, and a Hawaiian woman, sometimes playing both ethnicities in the same show. So, did it ever affect you or make you feel offended, or that you offend someone watching while playing these characters?
Well, for me, my experience working with this company, I was playing an indigenous woman and Middle Eastern Indian. And for me, my personal experience was just, I felt very itemized in a sense that like the white people were over here and you get to play X, Y, and Z, and all of the other colors, it doesn't matter what you are, Asian, mixed, Black, whatever, you're all in this other category, and it's very black and white, and there's no gray. And we don't live in a gray, we don't live in a black and white society. You know, we live in a very multicultural society, and it made me feel like the the parts written for people of color were less important than the parts for white people. And then in terms of, having to bend my own ethnicity to lend to another race that's not my own. My mother is Indian Guyanese of East Indian heritage, and my father's white. So I'm half Indian. And it's this issue of passing.
Right.
Can you play? Every person of color in this industry has had a conversation with a casting agent, an agent, someone is, what can you pass for? How can we market you? Because we are in the business of visual storytelling. We are in a sense marketing ourselves leading ourselves to different productions, film, TV, theater, whatever, and telling stories. And a visual aspect is really important. But now these conversations happening of, well, is that okay to have someone who isn't Indigenous playing an Indigenous person?
Right.
And that sort of thing. So it's an interesting time, an interesting thing to navigate, I think, especially for biracial people who don't fit into one box.
Right.
Yeah. And a question that when Massini first started when you both started this musical tokens thing, I remember we did that interview thing, and I remember asking you, what about the people who say like me are like half Filipino or biracial or something, and there aren't shows written for them or written for people like them? Is that wrong if then they go into doing a show like West Side Story if they're half Filipino and look Hispanic?
Right.
Is there something wrong with that? Like, I'm still open to answers. It's things like that like the whole marketable thing, like my agents have asked me, what can you pass as? And I'm kind of like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I feel like taking away a voice from, if I were to go in for something like West Side Story, I don't know how I would feel taking a voice away from a Puerto Rican person,
right,
and just putting my face on that and having to do, like, I don't know. I would just feel kind of weird doing it.
Yeah.
However, there's kind of like a standpoint to, if that's the only thing that I'm able to do because of the way that I look. And even in school, I struggled with this too. People were throwing a whole bunch of different shows at me saying, this is what you should do. You should be doing things like The King and I. But when I would go in for things like The King and I or Miss Saigon or things like that, people would get confused and look at me like, your last name is Juana.
Right.
And in comparison to people who identify as fully Asian or have fully Asian backgrounds or things like that, I wouldn't look like them, so it didn't really make sense to them. You know?
I think it's navigating this feeling of like, am I enough?
Mm-hmm.
Am I enough of this? I'm definitely not white, but we don't know where you are. And that's a really difficult space to navigate as I'm going to say in particular, a biracial identifying person, where you are splitting these two lines. It doesn't mean it's white and something else, any ethnicity, any background. And sometimes I think with these, now we are seeing, for example, like West Side Story, the expectation is that Maria and the ensemble should be of Puerto Rican or Latin descent. And so now we're starting to see, okay, it is important, someone's background, and because whose story are we telling? Mm-hmm. But sometimes the issue that I have is that certain shows and stories seem to follow that rule more carefully than others. So sometimes it's okay and expected that, we need to, this is this person's story, and they need to be represented on stage within the actors that we use. But for this show, whatever, we're just going to have a bunch of colored people and it doesn't matter. For example, I'm Aladdin on Broadway. I think any Indian person watching this right now is smiling right now and knowing the struggle of watching that show and knowing that there has never been a Jasmine or an Aladdin on Broadway who is of Middle Eastern or Indian descent. How is that possible? How is that possible? You could not put on The Color Purple and have no Black people on stage.
Right.
And people would say something, and people would object to that, and as they should. Yet for some reason, because Aladdin is this fictional place, that's how the casting directors get away with it. Agrabah doesn't exist. It lives between the Middle East and northern India. You know, the palace looks just like the Taj Mahal, which is in Agra in the north of India. Okay. However, it was supposed to be set in Baghdad, so now we're in the Middle East. So technically, it's flexible. So you have a white man always playing Jafar, the genie being played by a Black man. Aladdin and Jasmine are usually of Asian descent.
Right.
I'm like, where are the brown people? That is not your story.
Right.
I'm not, and you look in the ensemble, and all I see are Asian and Black and white people.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
How is this happening? How is no one saying something? If Mulan was being put on and there was a white girl playing Mulan or a Black girl, whatever, people would say something. And it's this issue of what do you pass as?
Right.
And why is it that some stories are more important to be authentic in terms of the casting than others?
Right.
And that is a really difficult line to to stand on. You know, there are not many parts written for people of Indian, South Asian, West Indian descent. There aren't. So yes, it's important to, I think, be authentic in the casting, but also this opportunity of like, well, am I going to work?
Right.
Yeah. But now I think, especially in this time, we have a responsibility to ask ourselves, should I be the person? Should I accept the role of Jasmine on Broadway when I'm half Filipino, half white? Right. How can I possibly accept this part?
Right.
And there's little girls in the audience, brown girls, who grew up with Jasmine, looking at her on TV, and then they come to a show and they're like, but that doesn't look like me.
Like me, right? Yeah.
And there is a responsibility as an actor now. So, like, yes, it's a very difficult industry to work in, and we all want to work. Yeah. But what are we trying to say? Mm-hmm. What is the impression? What is how do we want to be a role model for the stories that we're telling?
I wonder if any of the current climate that we're in will
affect
any type of change in these things, in that show, in that company in particular. Like, they need to take a hard look at who they, and it sounds bad, like who they allow to be seen for these roles. It's really, you know what I mean? Really make it inclusive. Like, say we want people of Middle Eastern or Indian descent. Say, like, they say that for other shows. For The Color Purple, they would say people or who identify as, which I'm
that word already. But anyways,
like, I really think they need to take a good look at it, because you're right. You're absolutely right. Like, there are people in the audience, people who grew up with this fictional movie story, but like, is it not based on Alibaba and the 40 Thieves? Like, if we really want to get down to it, it's not based on something real.
Right.
So
so exactly. So why is there a Chinese man playing Aladdin on Broadway? Like, that makes literally no sense. But why is it that nobody sees anything wrong with that? And it makes me feel like, okay, my brownness doesn't matter as much as other ethnicities.
Right.
And that's where I think a lot of Indian, mixed Indian, South Asian people feel like you really aren't seeing me, or not even that you don't see me, you don't value me.
Yeah.
And where's my representation?
Right.
Say more of a commercial theater experience. Mm-hmm. But it even comes down to smaller companies, anything. And I hope that with our current climate, that this phrase of I was, seeing something on social media this morning of like stopping this phrase that people say and of, well, they decided to go diverse on that part. And instead of saying like, oh, this person got it because they were right for it,
Right.
or they deserved it. And I'm hoping that starts to change the kind of language that we all use. Like, and I have like accept my responsibility and things that I've been complicit in myself to change the type of language that we accept and that we put up with from casting directors and agents and this sense of passing. And how do you navigate that as a mixed person, as a ethnically ambiguous person? Because that is the reality. We are visual storytellers. It is. And for me, that has been one of the biggest tools for my survival in this industry that can tear people apart, is to accept how I am seen and to not make it as personal. That doesn't mean that I am ambiguous Marie as a human being. But when someone sees me that I have to understand that this person might not know what I am. And that protects me from the work.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it kind of like then poses a question as to, I mean, it highlights specifically casting directors and productions that if you're casting for a show, not trying to, like, if we're talking about Aladdin, I feel sorry for people that aren't necessarily black or white, but people of color, like the broad scale of people of color, because it's like everybody just wants to work.
Totally.
So you as an actor, you kind of feel like you're in this weird like game of okay, well, I can't. They're asking for a person of color here, but like in another show, like, will I have that same opportunity to be seen in the same? Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, totally.
It becomes
that's kind of how it was with like that company that we all worked for.
Right.
I remember going in for that and sitting there and being like, I feel like I'm slightly right for all of these things. And what by slightly right, I mean my voice type. However, it just did. Sometimes I was sitting there and kind of feeling guilty about, doing these auditions and taking away a specific person from being able to do that. And when you do things like that, and even when we started doing the shows, I would sometimes see Asian families come in and sit down, and I would immediately feel guilty for being the wrong type of Asian playing this role, and I would think about only that for the entire show, and just, oh my God, do they know that I'm fake? And it's kind of been like a constant struggle of feeling not real on the stage. Mm-hmm.
And I think that this is a wonderful opportunity right now, considering what's happening in the world. For me, at least, one of the many things I'm doing is to look at my own life and say, okay, how have I been complicit in a system that takes away people's voices? How have I benefited from that system? And I was having this chat with another actor friend. She's Indian. And she used this phrase, and I felt so like it just hit the nail right on the head. She said, we, as light-skinned women of color, Indian women, are a more palatable color. And we are a more palatable version of ethnic people.
Right.
And that spoke so deeply to me because I am seen as that. I am more palatable. So you can stand to see me play an Indigenous person on stage because, there's a bit of a gray area, but does it make it right? Oh, right. Of course not. Of course not. And how do we I am really curious to see what will happen in our industry going forward. Like, how will we navigate this?
Mm-hmm.
How?
Yeah. I mean, I guess only time will tell.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, as actors, we all know we just want work. Like, that's the goal. The goal is to be able to work. So we go out for things, and I mean, this isn't on my list of questions, so I'm just asking. Are there roles that aren't necessarily asking for people of color that you go out for? Like, are there other types of roles that you go out for regardless of ethnicity, or, you know, like if they're asking for a specific, like, let's say they're asking for a Caucasian person, do you still go out for that role? Like, would you be inclined to still do that?
You mean like traditionally a Caucasian person?
Yes, traditionally.
Yeah, it's like, you know,
I mean, that was kind of like the whole thing. When I was in New York for a little bit, right after I got out of school, I would just kind of go in for anything that I felt like singing at. If they were asking for like 16 bars of like a pop rock, I'd just go, even though I didn't really fit into the show. I mean, I didn't really see anything wrong with that, because even if you don't get a call back or anything, you got to try out some new material or things like that. And sometimes maybe you can surprise that. I've always been taught that maybe you can surprise the casting with showing them what they want. Things like that.
Yeah.
I think it is important. I mean, you're seeing, we are seeing a lot of like, let's say in the more traditional musical theater canon, people of color being cast not as supporting parts, but as leads.
Yeah.
Not clear. Not the best friend,
Right.
but the ingenue.
Right.
Like My Fair Lady, the touring cast, Eliza is being played by, I believe she's Egyptian. And that's important. And especially as leads. I'm going to say that again. Like that, this kind of tokenization of people of color, that and you see it even within like the traditional casting of a show, that okay, and let's say this whatever jukebox musical or whatever, well, this person's always the person, the best friend is always the person of color, and then this person's a little bit this, and then the main woman is always going to be white with blonde hair, for example, and like switching that up. And
Mamma mia.
I don't listen. I didn't want to say it, but yeah, like Lisa is always the person of color. And I remember going in for Sophie and being so disappointed when I saw that they cast a white person, not because that person wasn't talented or good, but I'm like, wow, what an opportunity to like change it up.
Right.
Change it up, like to try something different. Yeah. Expand your horizons.
That part.
Yeah.
I mean, so the third question kind of goes into when you're going into audition, like the same idea. But how do you navigate a situation when it's asking for an ethnic or exotic person that is not your race? I mean, we somewhat touched on it, but when you're asked to go in for a specific role, a specific character, how do you navigate that situation? Do you is it like any other audition, or do you talk to your agent and say you don't want to do that? Like, how do you navigate those situations?
I mean, there have been times where I've had to have the talk with my agent being like, I don't feel comfortable doing this, especially if it's something that requires like accent work. I have been asked to do that before, and I did do it actually one time, and I felt horribly afterwards. It was the worst thing, but oftentimes I'll get called in for like Latina roles, and a whole bunch of them ask for accents. And there have been some times where I've had to be like, I don't want to do this because I don't feel right doing this. I don't want to put on some accent and offend all of these people, and just it's just embarrassing to myself and to people who are Latina or Latino, and having to watch. I don't know. I get annoyed when I see movies. There was one movie that I watched the other day that I had to turn off because she was talking about how she was half Filipino or something, and she was clearly not. I had to turn it off, and I just think that if I were to if I were to go into something like that and expect people to believe me when I don't believe other people,
Right.
I would just be a hypocrite. Like, so it was different with that other company that we worked for, just because I felt differently because I was playing a whole bunch of different things. I mean, I didn't feel better necessarily, but as an Asian woman, there aren't a lot of things that I am essentially right for. So there was that. Not
Right.
necessarily saying that I felt 100% correct about that, but I felt better.
Right. I
I
hear
don't know
that.
if it makes any sense.
Right. It does make sense.
And I don't know if there has been a time where I've gone into an audition for exotic or ethnic seeking woman. I don't know if I've ever gone into one of those auditions feeling completely right or feeling completely okay with myself for going in. I mean, it is that constant struggle of, I need a job, I need to pay my bills, I need to do all these things. And this is the first opportunity that would allow me to do something like that. So should I take it, or should I follow my morals and keep looking for something else? And that's, I feel like, a huge constant struggle that I've had to deal with through navigating my career.
Right.
I think that's like what I hear a lot in what Kaitlyn's saying is just the struggle, like just to bring it back to the theme of this conversation, is of being mixed, of being biracial.
Right.
We as a people don't belong to one particular tribe. And the almost psychological ramifications of something like that on mixed people that we don't even understand now, as the world is continuing to mix and different races marrying different races, and that feeling of belonging and feeling guilty is something that I hear in a lot of biracial people, of, you know, I am half white and and half Indian, and sometimes I don't feel enough of anything. So who am I? It's almost like imposter syndrome. Who am I to be in this room with a bunch of South Asian people when I am, let's use the phrase again, a more palatable version of a brown person to a viewer, like on screen or on stage? And then we get into the whole shadeism, and that's a whole other conversation.
Right.
How, like specifically, like as a mixed person, as a biracial person, navigating this breakdown, saying or seeking exotic or ethnically ambiguous people. Often for stage, I'm called in for more ethnically specific roles than, let's say, film and TV.
Right.
And for stage, all sorts of things, Eastern European, like to round, to like all different things. And navigating that is a constant struggle, I think, because it's not only like, yes, of course we want to work, but also like, how do we find the space for people who are biracial? I think it's about that. Like, where do they fit in?
Right.
Where's my place in this?
Right.
I think what it comes down to is like creating more content and creating more shows, writing things, producing things like that. I mean, I don't personally know many shows that have
Mixed.
lead biracial or mixed people in them. I can't even think of one off the top of my head now that I'm sitting here thinking about it. I don't know very many. There are probably some, but there's just not enough.
Yeah. And I think that I'm not even going to say it in a like therein lies the problem, but like therein lies a part of a wonderful solution, or solution sounds so finite, but a step forward that, you know what, like our world is changing. 60 years ago, 80 years ago, people couldn't, there were no such, you couldn't marry within, people didn't marry within the races. Now, 2020, I mean, no one blinks an eye now. So there's a lot of almost lost people not feeling represented anywhere. So where do we fit in? So yes, like taking the agency of, okay, writing parts, telling different stories of different types of people that exist today and that have existed. For example, Tara and I did a wonderful show called The Invisible out with Catalyst Theater, and my character was half Indian, half white. And like Tara and I would have endless conversations about how this is the first time in my almost decade-long career that I have ever played my actual race on stage.
Wow.
The experience of that for me was, I will never forget it, because for the first time on stage, I didn't feel like a fraud. I was like, ain't nobody can take this away from me. Nobody can say you don't look Indian enough on stage, or you look too brown. You know, you look like you know, you checked off their ethnicity box. You know, in terms of casting, and that was a really empowering and a positive thing going forward, and it gives me hope. I have to hold on to hope in these times that that these things, that new shows will come up and representation will continue to move forward in representing a very wide array of people.
Right.
Yeah.
So do you feel like in some ways you felt seen? Like,
oh girl. I mean, I felt, but then there was also the feeling of like, you know, my character would often be described as like an Indian woman.
Right.
And this is a whole other conversation of like, makes people like, which one are you?
Right.
You gotta pick, right? Like, and sometimes I'm like, do I, like, Tara's like gonna smile, like she remembers the conversations, like, do I look brown enough on stage? Like, it's psychotic. It really really get into your head, and like having an identity crisis within my own life of like, do I look brown enough?
Right.
Brown people come to the show, are they like, who's that white girl on stage?
Right.
And Kaitlyn's laughing, you know, she feels my pain.
Right.
Like, am I a fraud? I'm like, this is who I am. This part is literally who I am.
Right.
I don't feel enough.
But what a new feeling to have in comparison to like, you know, other shows.
Like, yeah, totally.
That's
like,
awesome.
There's like an umbrella, a parachute of like, like. And what's under that parachute? You know, that's sometimes how it feels.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. See, I couldn't, and that, like, I mean, as a Black woman, as Black people, I think Tara and I, we already know what that struggle is when it comes to theater. But like to have that, like I couldn't.
It's a whole different thing.
It's a whole different thing. I couldn't imagine that struggle as a person of color, like, you know, because you know we're all lumped in when it comes to being people of color.
But it's like it is that sort of like, you know, you have a lot of ignorant people or
Unfortunately,
uneducated people who will say like, oh my God, I thought you were white.
Right.
How that makes me feel. And I'm not even talking like white people saying that. I'm talking people of color saying that to me.
Right.
Knowing who my mother is and saying that to me and how that makes me feel. I'm like, you really don't see me.
Yeah.
You really don't see me. Like and this industry only magnifies that. It really, you know, it does for everyone. It you know, once again, we're visual storytellers. That's who we are, but you can't help but make it personal.
Right.
Our vessel is our body to create our art. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, so the final question before we go into our lightning round. Does representation matter? And I think you guys somewhat answered, but why does it matter?
Yeah, well, in that interview we had, I kind of related representation to a rainbow or like a spectrum. Right now, you can walk outside pretty much anywhere and you just see people of all different backgrounds, and that's just kind of the world that we live in. To only see one type of person on a stage just doesn't seem real to me.
Right.
It's not how we live now. Maybe if you're doing a period piece that's very specific, I mean, that's kind of an exception. But I just think that if we are going to be storytellers, we need to be able to tell stories happening now to people that are walking around on the street outside. To be a little girl to see that you are unrepresented in a show shouldn't be happening anymore. There should be a spot for everyone. There is space for everybody in the world, and there should be space for everybody on the stage or on the TV or anything like that. It just doesn't make sense without that, you know?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of it is representing humanity,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like,
Yeah.
and I think the pendulum has swung so far one way, and it's starting to move now in this other direction, and it's going to go way in the other direction, and as it should, where finally people of color are not going to be at the back. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't want to see companies checking off their we cast of color and seeing them all in an ensemble or in like 2 scenes on stage.
Right.
No text. You are literally taking away their voice. I don't care who has hierarchy. I don't care if this white
Right.
person is more well known than, like, it's time. Enough. Like, and that, I mean, of course, like, representation of course matters, and that is the kind of representation that matters. Is we have, like, that pendulum has to swing to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the beautiful things I hope that's going to happen from our current climate, that our white brothers and sisters realizing the privilege that they have inherited without working for, and being able to so graciously step to the side for people of color to finally have a voice. I think that that's a huge part of it, because it's very easy to say, well, of course I support people of color, but when you have to give up something in order for that to happen, that is the actual work. I can even say it for myself in recognizing my own privilege as a light-skinned mixed woman. That's a whole other conversation. But I am looking forward to the change in representation in terms of, let's say, people will crucify me for saying this, but the hierarchy on stage. I want to see people of color speaking and singing on stage, down center. That's where I want to see them.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's a word.
Yeah.
Preach. Okay, so now for the lighter portion.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you guys 5 lightning questions, and as fast as you can. And you can even give an explanation if you want to the answers. But here they are. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. How long does it take you to get ready for a show?
Half an hour.
Really?
45 minutes. Tara's like, really?
As a cover, I've probably done it in 5, but I like to do it. I like to take at least a half hour, an hour.
I need to really speed up my I'm like 2 hours. Okay. Favorite Disney character or movie?
Ooh.
I said the T word.
I think I like Lilo and Stitch.
Yeah.
Solid. I'm gonna go a little more. I really liked as an adult, I really liked Inside Out.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
What about you, Tara? What's your favorite Disney character or movie?
Like The Lion King, easy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, if you could have dinner with 3 people, dead or alive, who would it be?
3 people.
Mm-hmm.
My goodness.
Oh.
I feel like I'd have to have my mom there just so she could experience it.
Okay, so she's one.
She's going to watch this and be so mad if I don't say her name. So my mom. Oh my God. Probably like Kaylani or something.
Yes.
Kaylani. And Obama. And Michelle Obama. Can I say that?
You said 3, but okay.
I'm sorry. There's so many people I have
Okay, they're a package deal. It's fine. 2 have become 1. There you go.
Oh, this is a hard question. Oh God. Dead or alive? Who would I would like to have dinner with the woman that I portrayed in the show I did earlier. Her name was Noor Inayat Khan. I would like to have dinner with her. I would like to have dinner with Meryl Streep, not just because she's a wonderful and amazing actor, but because she is a mother and somehow seems to have this beautiful balance in her life. That's something I'm always striving for, to like have a life and a career. And I would like to have dinner with I would like to have dinner with like one of my ancestors that came from India to Guyana.
Yes.
Yes, I would like to have heard about that journey.
Yeah. Okay, so next question. Would you rather have a full bladder in a dance call or rumble in the tumble at a vocal audition?
vocal audition, rumble in the tumble at a vocal audition. Out of dance calls is so hard.
Rumble in the tumble simply because like singing audition is much shorter than a dance call.
Fair. That's fair.
That's hysterical.
I don't know why people expect me to be in a dance call. Anyways. What is your dream role in a show?
Like specifically, like what character? Or
yes, any show. It could be any show.
Probably Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
As Eliza Hamilton, Skylar Hamilton.
I have a few.
Okay, tell us them.
Still, you all like. I mean, I feel like every person of color is like, I really want to be in Hamilton because, like, wow, we're all seen and we're all, you know. Yeah. Like, I would love to play Eliza in Hamilton. I would really love to play Christine in the Phantom of the Opera, to see someone who looks like me who can sing like that and doesn't have to be white. Mm-hmm. But there are women of color who are classical sopranos.
Yes,
perish the thought.
Yes.
Perish the thought that we're not all belters. And I would really love, even though I'm not Italian, to play, simply because of the music, whether it be in a concert version or whatever, but Francesca Johnson in Bridges in Madison County, because I just love singing that music. So, yeah.
Amazing. You guys were awesome. Thank you so much for answering, some of these questions about what it means to be ethnically ambiguous. I think a lot of people are going to take something away from this, and hopefully the right people are watching this and can create space for all of us to be included and seen in shows. So thank you so much, and make sure you guys follow them and check out what they're doing. All right, take care.
Much.
Thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and visit our website musicaltokens.com for your daily dose of female power.